Hey guys, it's Allison from AllisonRaves.co, and in this video I want to give you a new approach to affirmation. So if you feel like you're saying affirmations and it's making you feel kind of like stressed out and tense in your body, or you're reading affirmations and it just feels like a bunch of bullshit, then you're going to want to watch this video. Many of you guys already know I'm a marketing and business coach, but one of the things I found that was helping my clients the most, kind of unexpectedly by accident back in 2019, 2020, was like mindset work. So people were coming to me for marketing help and business help, and this was a wall I was even hitting for myself. I'm doing all the practical things right, but I'm still hitting this wall. And that was happening for my clients too. And the real like magical answer at the time was helping them deal with their mindset. In 2019, that was the first year that I actually experienced the power of leveraging mindset. I did it through creating a vision for my life, through saying affirmations every day, and then also through doing what's called the theater of the mind, which is inspired by, I think Psycho-Cybernetics is where that comes from, the book. And I found all that really helpful, just starting to visualize myself having the life that I want. When limiting beliefs come up, trying to say affirmations and doing all those things, that was so helpful, and it skyrocketed my success, especially in 2020. However, all of us, me and the clients, were still hitting this wall. So I would teach mindset and I would implement mindset for myself, and I would just ascend so much, and then eventually kind of felt like it was not working anymore. I would start feeling like the stress and the anxiety again. I'm guessing if you're watching this video that you might really relate to this. So one of the symptoms that happens when you're still kind of struggling with mindset at a deeper body level, which we'll talk about in a second, is, for example, I would read an affirmation card and I was unable to like think positively. It would just make me feel stress and tension in my body. A lot of your processing power in your body is not actually in your mind. And I have a blog post about this on how trauma can impact our mindset. I don't want you to be afraid of the word trauma, because the bottom line is that even in the healthiest of childhoods and in the most upbeat of lives, you have probably experienced trauma. Trauma simply happens when we experience things too quickly for us to process, and we're not able to release that energy after that experience. And trauma can happen from big things like what you would expect, like being in a war or experiencing an accident or something violent. But trauma can also happen with small things like fender benders or a dental procedure or, I don't know, tripping and falling unexpectedly. So little t trauma, like hearing a loud noise. Little t trauma happens to all of us. And some of us are blessed not to have big T trauma, but all of us have experienced little t trauma. So I don't want you to be afraid of that word. But I say all this to say, your brain is processing like 20% of the information and memories and like things, information that you use on a day-to-day basis, and the rest of your nervous system is storing like 80% of the rest of your processing power. And so that's why using somatics, and soma, the phrase soma just refers to the body, that's why using somatics can be so helpful in getting you further progress in your mindset issues. So I want to give you kind of like a beginner exercise on how I do this. Now I created a mindset card deck. So this is when this is a card deck, and these just have affirmations on them. And so like, I'll just turn one over and you can see, if it will focus, there's a little affirmation that might be backwards for you. So I created this card deck because I wanted to just be able to draw a card and feel into the affirmation. And this is part of how I kind of discovered this problem of like, oh, I'm not feeling this. I can't convince myself that I feel this. And I'm actually feeling kind of stressed out reading this card. So I would pick a card from the deck, and I'll just do this now, just to kind of show you this example of reading an affirmation. So first, I'll teach you kind of the starting point. So the affirmation I pulled for now is this one, and it says, failure doesn't exist because every action and event moves me forward. So if you read this card, or any affirmation, you can find them on the internet, if you read this card and it feels good, then I want you to lean into that feeling. If it feels good, you're like, oh, what a relief. I love this card so much. It's making me joyful. I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to think about where that joyful feeling shows up in your body. And this may feel very unnatural at first, but I promise with some practice, you're gonna get like really quick at identifying where you feel things in your body. So for me, I read this card and I'm actually feeling some constriction. So this is a really good opportunity because I could teach you what I'm going to do here. If this card felt good to me, I would, normally a good feeling for me feels like tingling in my chest or butterflies in my stomach, and then I can feel it throughout my arms, and it feels warm and it feels like a hug in my insides. So that's what a good feeling potentially feels like for me. But so if you feel a good feeling when you read an affirmation, that's the end of your work. You want to deepen that good feeling as much as you can, lean into it, see it get even bigger and brighter, but you're done here. If it feels like a constriction, here's the 2 steps. The first one, we'll use our head. So if you read an affirmation and it sounds like bullshit when you say it, we want to create what's called a bridge statement. I didn't create this term, but a bridge statement is simply a term that feels more believable for us. So if the affirmation, like the part of it that's making me feel constriction, is that failure doesn't exist. So the reason why that doesn't feel true for me is because I've done some things that didn't work. And so that kind of feels like evidence that failure does exist. And so I can create a statement that feels a little bit more true for me. So one thing that does feel true for me right now is that not everything I do works the first time, but everything I do moves me forward in some way. That feels very true. Even things I do that fail are still moving me forward in some way. That feels more true for me. I can see how like this statement could be true. Failure doesn't exist. Like how even my reframe is basically saying failure doesn't exist, but I don't feel that as a yes in my body. What feels like a yes to me is not everything I do works, but everything I do is moving me forward. That's a great bridge statement because I believe it. And so that's your first step. If you've never worked with affirmations before, and then I would encourage you to try this step first. Like, I read an affirmation, sounds like bullshit. Let's see if we can make a bridge statement. It's really, really powerful. However, this can have some walls too. So this creating a bridge statement is a really good tool, but we can take it even deeper. So when we use the body or the soma, so soma refers to the body. This is why like somatic coaching has the word soma and somatic. When we use the body, we're involving our nervous system, which is 80% more processing power than just involving your head. So I'll take a couple deep breaths here to ground. And now that I've grounded, when I think about this statement, I want to feel where I feel this statement in my body. And so what it feels like to me, like I mentioned earlier, I feel a constriction, but just getting as specific as possible. I feel it kind of in my sternum. So like between my stomach and my chest basically, or like, I mean, it's literally right underneath my sternum. And it feels like a small black ball, like maybe a marble. When I think about, so these are questions I would ask a client. Does it have any movement? Does it have a color? Is it big? Is it small? For me, this constriction, this feeling that I'm feeling is very small. It's like a marble. It's not moving. It's still, it's heavy. And that's what it feels like. So that's the first step, is for you to ground by taking a few deep breaths and then lean into when I feel this feeling, when I say this affirmation doesn't feel good. So what do I physically feel? And the second part of this is just to honor any emotions that come up. So when I'm feeling into this black marble, I actually feel some anxiety. You might feel sadness, you might feel anger, you might feel anxious like me. And I just want you to know if those feelings come up, you don't have to shy away from them, because this is a really important part of the process, is just seeing those emotions, like giving them space, noticing them. And I want you to know it is so safe to be sad. It is so safe to be anxious. It is so safe to be angry, and those feelings can just be here. So if you started leaning into the feeling physically and you had some emotion come up, then just honor that. Give it space. Give it time. Pause this video if you need to. And so now that we've described that physical feeling in as much detail as possible, we've honored any emotions that are coming up, and for me, it's a little bit of anxiety. When I lean into that anxiety, then that ball, I start getting kind of like this jittery feeling in my stomach. So the next step from here is we're gonna ask a question, and I'll tell you the question in a second, but it's important for you to ask the question and really tune into like the kind of first intuitive answer that comes up. So you don't want to overthink it. And if you do overthink it, it's okay. You're not going to break the process or do it wrong. You can't do it wrong. But it's really helpful to tune into your immediate answer. So we felt the physical sensation. We might have had some emotions come up, and maybe you didn't have any emotions come up, and that's okay too. And now we're going to ask it, what do you need? So for me, when I ask that question, I'm just being really vulnerable and inviting you into this process with me right now, doing this live with you. When I ask it what it needs, the first word that comes to mind is comfort, which I think makes sense. Another step that you can take here, and I did this really quickly, silently, because I've practiced this process a lot with myself and clients. When I said comfort, I immediately thought of myself as a 7-year-old. And this makes sense because when I was a 7-year-old, I remember those are some of my first memories of having financial fear. So I'm curious if this failure or this fear of failure is maybe connected to like some financial fear that I have. So I just think that's interesting to note, and it doesn't really matter. But the first word that comes to mind is comfort. It makes sense that if I'm afraid that failure exists, that I would want comfort, right? And so then your next step, you have 2 paths you can take from here on your own. One is a little bit more vulnerable. You would rather have a coach to guide you through this, and I'm happy to guide you into this process. One would be, when was the first time I felt this physical sensation? Again, intuitive first answer. Could be a teenager, could be last year. Most likely it's when you're a kid. When is the first time I felt the small black marble in my chest? And then for me, if it could be a memory that comes up of my 7-year-old. I think about myself when I'm 7 and I say, ask her, what would be really comforting to you? And for her, it's probably a hug. And so I can give myself a hug. I can get a blanket and wrap it around my shoulders and mimic a hug. I can go ask my husband or partner for a hug. I can cuddle with my dog. That's something that would feel comforting to me. So knowing that the part of me that's afraid of failure, knowing that the part of me that's afraid of failure needs comfort, I can just give myself comfort. And this fear of failure might melt away, or it may not. But the important thing is not to say, failure doesn't exist, failure doesn't exist, failure doesn't exist. We can't just say that over and over again and then just feel like it doesn't exist. So that's part of what the bridge statement is doing, is we are kind of meeting ourselves halfway, right? But going into the body, we can take it a step further. Now, if you don't feel comfortable just trying to think about the first time you remembered something, maybe you don't have any memories that come up, that is totally okay. You can just stop with, the need that came to mind was comfort. How can I give myself comfort? What is comforting to me today? You can stop right there. So this is a very powerful way to deal with limiting beliefs. It's a very healing way to deal with limiting beliefs when you're speaking affirmations that are bringing up constriction for you. I hope this video is helpful for you. If it is, make sure to subscribe and follow me so you can see more content like this. I do have a lot of free resources available on my website, and I also have spots for somatic coaching if you would like me to guide you into the process, just like the one we did today, or diving into any other issues. What I'll say about somatic processes is that it's different every time, and it's always guided by you, by the client, or me if I'm working on myself. The person who's doing the work is sovereign and controls the process, so we might not ever do inner child work, or we might dive deep into that kind of thing, but the whole process is controlled by you, so don't worry about it kind of feeling weird. And like I said, I hope this is helpful, and I hope to see you guys in the next video, and thank you for watching.